After more than a month of struggle that has included brawls, Parliament has passed a security bill harshly criticized for paving the way for a police state, while the main opposition party has said it will bring the new law before the Constitutional Court. Parliament, which had previously passed 67 articles of the bill despite the opposition's efforts to filibuster the Assembly, voted after midnight on Thursday in favor of the remaining 2 articles that deal with enforcement and when the bill will come into effect. Out of a total of 231 deputies who took part in the voting, 199 voted in favor, while 32 voted against the bill. Akif Hamzaçebi, Parliamentary Group Deputy Chairman of the main opposition Republican People's Party, CHP, said just before the final vote in Parliament that CHP would bring the law before the Constitutional Court next week for violating the Constitution. "I believe this blow you have inflicted on the Constitution and the rule of law will be rejected by the Constitutional Court," Hamzaçebi said. Discussions and voting on the last 2 articles lasted more than 16 hours and the Parliament session, which convened at 2 p.m. on Thursday, ended after 6 a.m. the following morning. The internal security bill has been heavily criticized not only by opposition groups in Turkey but also by Western countries for dealing a blow to democracy and fundamental freedoms such as the right to life, right to demonstrate and right to privacy. The bill, which Parliament began discussing in mid-February, gives police and governors extensive powers. According to the law, police officers will be able to take under protection anyone who is considered to be a public disturbance, or threat to security or private property. It is expected that this new police power will be used against anti-government demonstrations in order to intimidate the opposition. According to the law, police officers do not need a court order or prior approval from a prosecutor to take a person under protection. As this power has not been described in the law as detention, the police will not be required to take the individual for a health screening prior to being held in custody. Under the current legislation, police officers cannot detain an individual without the permission of a prosecutor. Now police officers will be able to keep a person in custody for 24 hours without needing the authorization of a prosecutor. However, in cases of mass demonstrations the detention period will extend to 48 hours. The parliamentary group deputy chairman from other opposition parties represented in Parliament also blasted the bill, which they described as being against democracy, when they took the floor before the final vote. Akif Hamzaçebi, parliamentary group deputy chairman of the Nationalist Movement Party, MHP, maintained that the bill would serve to intimidate people from taking part in protests, repressing freedoms. Dries Balukan, parliamentary group deputy chairman of the pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party, HDP, said the struggle for democracy in Turkey would continue despite the bill. "Even if this bill becomes law, we are sure this law will serve to knit 78 million people, the population of Turkey, closer." The law also provides that those who take part in public demonstrations or rallies with their faces partly or totally covered to conceal their identity could face sentences of between 2.5 to 4 years imprisonment. Protesters carrying items such as Molotov cocktails, any type of blade, tools that may be used to injure others, or slingshots and iron marbles can also be sentenced to the same period of incarceration. Following a speech during the discussions in Parliament in which Recep Özel, a deputy from the Justice and Development Party, AK Party, said it would be a most honorable thing to vote in favor of the bill, HDP's Hasip Kaplan responded that the bill is being passed under instructions by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. "But keep in mind, this is a Pyrrhic victory," said Kaplan. The EU, which Turkey aspires to be part of, has several times criticized the bill, saying that it will severely restrict the basic rights and freedoms of the citizens of Turkey. At the beginning of the month, the European Parliament's EP, Turkey rapporteur, Kadir Piri, underlined that the bill is at odds with the prerequisites of a democratic state because the amendments in the omnibus bill violate the right to demonstrate, freedom of expression and the right to privacy. Speaking to a Dutch national broadcaster, Piri also expressed concern that the steps the government has taken over the past 2 years raise suspicions about the country's willingness to join the EU. This bill paves way for police violence. Instead of addressing the previous shortcomings with regard to the police authority, the police's authorities will be expanded further, said Piri. If these developments of the last 2 years continue, one might question if Turkey wants to join EU, she said. Hakan Şükür, an independent Istanbul deputy who resigned from the ruling Justice and Development Party, AK Party, has said the law, which he described as an indication of an autocratic government, would turn Turkey into an intelligence state. From now on, the government has taken away your personal freedom, Şükür posted on Twitter early on Friday. Noting that police officers are now authorized by law to keep people in custody for up to 48 hours without a prosecutor's approval and without being required to inform anybody about the custody, Şükür added, "Welcome to a period of military coup." According to the law, which also gives the police more extensive authority to use weapons, police officers can shoot at protesters in order to prevent them from harming property, while according to current legislation police officers are only authorized to gradually increase the use of force in order to prevent a crime. The police will now be able to shoot and kill a person throwing a Molotov cocktail, for example, instead of being limited to using less force or less harmful measures at first, such as tear gas. The controversial bill also received sharp criticism from the Council of Europe, CO. The CO's Human Rights Commissioner Nils Muiznieks warned in a statement in February that the bill runs the risk of increasing human rights violations. Expressing deep concern about the extensive power to be granted to the police, Muiznieks said, "I think in particular that any extension of the powers of the police to use firearms, to use force during demonstrations, to stop and search, or to apprehend suspects at their own initiative without judicial authorization, would bear the risk of increasing the likelihood of human rights violations, notably with respect to the right to life, the right to freedom of assembly, and the right to respect for private life." Police officers will be able to search people and their cars based on reasonable suspicion without requiring prior authorization from a prosecutor. They are even authorized to conduct strip searches according to the law. The bill has also been condemned by the opposition for putting an end to the principle of the separation of powers by delegating some powers of the judiciary to governors. Now governors, who are under the direct control of the government, will be able to instruct the police to go after the suspects of a crime. Those who violate the measures taken by a governor to maintain public order during public protests that would jeopardize public order or people's lives will face a prison sentence ranging from 3 months to a year. The bill also allows police officers to wiretap telephones for 48 hours before a court order is issued. The police will need to submit a request for a wiretap within 24 hours, but the judge is only required to deliver a judgment on the issue within 48 hours. Currently, a judge needs to rule on the issue within 24 hours. US-based watchdog Freedom House, which describes itself as an independent watchdog organization dedicated to the expansion of freedom around the world, also criticized the security bill, saying it would undermine democracy. Susan Cork, the director of the Watchdog's Eurasia programs, said in a statement issued in late February after the first 10 articles of the bill were passed, "It is no exaggeration to say that the future of Turkish democracy hangs in the balance with this law. The legislation will eviscerate critical checks on search and detention, while exacerbating the problem of politically appointed governors overseeing police operations. Widening the scope of when police may use firearms against protesters is dangerous and out of step with UN guidelines on the use of force by law enforcement," Cork added. Amnesty International, AI, also criticized the security bill, saying it threatens human rights and must be stopped. In a statement issued in late February, AI said, "Legal amendments pending before Turkey's parliament, dubbed the Domestic Security Package, threaten human rights, including the prospect of increased arbitrary detention, excessive use of firearms by police and politically motivated investigations if passed into law." According to the law, the police college and the police academy will be closed down and the rights already acquired by students in these schools will be considered nullified. In his speech on the floor during discussions, MHP Deputy Alimik blasted the closure of the schools, saying that this would be a huge sin on the part of the government. The omnibus bill originally included 132 articles, but after the first 67 articles of the bill, the most criticized part of the bill, were passed, the rest was withdrawn by the ruling party to the Parliamentary Interior Affairs Commission more than 2 weeks ago. Considering that Parliament will possibly recess after the first week of April due to the general elections in June, the ruling party dropped the remaining 63 articles of the bill to the Commission. According to the law, the Gendarmerie General Command, JGK, as well as the Coast Guard Command, SGK, is subordinated to the Interior Ministry, putting all work related to the assignment of the personnel under the Interior Minister's control. Both the JGK and the SGK are currently subordinate to the General Staff. The step has been harshly criticized by opposition parties, which maintain that the two bodies will come under political sway, as the bill authorizes the Minister of Interior to appoint gendarmerie officers below the rank of general. The law will enter into force after being published in the official gazette following Erdogan's approval. According to the government, the main goal of the package is to prevent public order from being disrupted by illegal demonstrations and to maintain public security. The proposed law was first announced by Erdogan on October 12, 2014 after protests became violent following the government's failure to assist in preventing the Syrian Kurdish town of Kobani from falling to the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL. The government's decision to pass the bill after being withdrawn to the Interior Affairs Commission came shortly after Erdogan criticized some steps the government was preparing to take as part of a settlement process launched to resolve the country's Kurdish issue. Erdogan said no further steps should be taken in the process before the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, which is recognized as a terrorist organization by Turkey, the US and the EU, started to lay down their arms, as previously agreed upon. Several hours before the ruling party's decision was made public, Deputy Prime Minister Yalçın Akdoğan said remarks by the HDP and PKK have poisoned the peace process.